What's going on, world? It's your boy at Big Game James underscore 36. And this is Den Media Group presents a special edition. One of the things that I do love to delve into, it's a family trade. I love law. I love legal issues. I'm not a lawyer, though. So any advice that I give to you is not one. I am not associated with the bar. If you follow my legal advice, you're an idiot. But I do have some things that I do know. To quote one of my favorite rappers, I ain't past the bar, but I know a little bit. I also know enough lawyers to be able to come in, get us connected with people, and for us to be able to break down these different cases. One in particular, if you didn't catch our show with Rowan Law on Thursday, phenomenal, really good. It's like I should call it the Idiot's Guide to knowing the FSU legal situation. I'll give you John, I'll answer that question there in a second as we get some housekeeping before we bring it up here. But there was one thing that was brought up, and I love when people don't act like there's something that they're not. It's so prevalent in Twitter. Everybody on Twitter knows everything about everything. And then when challenged with correct information, they get so mad. The panties get in a bunch. Sorry, Danielle. No, that's not trying to make a say. I don't know a better term. But they get into these things, and you want to have these pissing contests when there are experts that you can truly just ask. And what my guy said was, I'm not familiar with Sunshine State law. And what I said was, that was so humble, and yet a very interesting part because we don't know how this affects. So we're going to go back through the entire case. We're going to also talk about the NCAA's case. We're going to also talk about a lot of other different things that are going on legally, how it could shape us. And if you have any questions, that is reserved for two things. Shout out to my guy, the Big Oos, C Clutches. You got to make your comments on the YouTube channel. So even if you're watching on X, shift over to Den Media Group on YouTube. That is how we track your questions, and we go with that. Now, if you don't watch this show or this network, we're not your traditional network. If you're looking for humor, or if you're looking for things that are said with the Queen's English, and you're looking for a lot of proper dialogue and talk, go check out the reputables. I am unreputable. I speak presidential. I curse, I drink, I smoke, I do a lot of other different things, but that's because I probably have early onset CTE for hitting people at your favorite university or hitting your favorite university during the process. We will say off-cuff jokes. I'm going to start off with one. This is not a whites chat. We do not, unless whites have a very good question, we do not answer whites. This is a colored people's chat. Shout out to, if you want to know what a colored person looks like, boom, this is a colored person. It's not about your actual skin color. It is you are a member. Members get their questions answered, or super chats. Super chats can get their questions answered as well. So like that means you're giving bread, or you are supporting the channel in a multitude of different ways. We encourage those different things. But we do really want questions. Questions drive the conversation. You can also, there's no reason to be stupid in America when we have the information right here. Do not try to Google. Google is not your friend. Google will only give you confirmation bias because you're only going to look for what you need to look for. What we're going to do is we have a lawyer. She actually passed the bar. She's actually sued the government. She actually knows what Sunshine State laws are. She actually has done these things. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you an opportunity to listen to real people who do this so that we can all go to the bars and do while we listen to all these shows and while we're a part of all these different groups. So we can pretend to be smarter than everybody else. At least you can literally take what the lawyer said verbatim and go in and talk like a lawyer as opposed to your partner who does other shit. The only reason I know some civil shit is because you don't know if you've ever made it. You've never been rich, and you've never been famous, and you've never done anything until you've been sued. Now, my guy, shout out to John Noe. John Noe says, how do we gift memberships? That is a great question. I believe you have to be watching this on you're on Safari on your computer. You can't be watching this in the YouTube app. When you go there, you go to our Did Media Group page. You have to become a member yourself, and then from there, when you're watching the show, you can get the opportunity to gift membership. So if you want to gift 5 all-in members, I would greatly appreciate that job. That would be dope. That's a lot of money. You could gift something a little cheaper as well, but we greatly appreciate that. So members that we do have, I might not be able to acknowledge your membership if you join and become a member while me and Danielle are engaging in our debate. Not debate, because I'm not going to argue with her. I'm coming to learn too. While we're engaging in her, Robbie Heck Music. I don't know what kind of music you make, but because you're a member, I'm gonna subscribe to your channel, and I want to hear what kind of music you make, Robbie. Matter of fact, Robbie's so cool that he did it twice. Boom. I don't even know how you can become a YouTube member twice, but Robbie did that, and I appreciate that. And then John, he became a greenie as well. Welcome to the colored section. You get to ask questions. Everybody who knows me knows that today I had to go take some young men to Ruth Chris. We would talk about that. I'll probably do an impromptu show tomorrow breaking down tour duty. As you guys know, because I did mat drills and because I hit people like almost 20 years ago, I get to go watch things that everybody else gets to not watch. So I'll give my opinions on tour duty. Also, even though it's not very highly talked about, I happen to have a young man that I drove over to Tallahassee. Well, I didn't drive him over; his family did, but I made sure the trip was going to happen. We had Jamie French went over there. I'll talk about. I'll give you some real. If y'all want some real inside information, because I have the inside information, other people can kind of tell you about. They can give you an in-depth interview, in-depth, exclusive kid with the kid that I coach. As you see, Mandarin Mustangs, region champs, should have been state champs. Shit didn't happen. So yeah. So John gifted 5 memberships, and the beautiful Jen, who I found out is 6 foot. I did not know she was a tall Amazon. Guys, if you listen to the show, Jen's single. I don't know if she's out of the game, but we do have a theory that goes around Did Media Group with interracial marriages and couples. We need linemen. Jen is 6 foot. Hey, just saying, guys. Boom, right there. Jen, go holla at Jen, and help us get some linemen. But Jen does have a strict policy. She does not talk to non-coloreds. So you need to be a greenie in order for that to happen. So don't be cheap. Show her that you are a high value man, and pay the $3.99 goddamn cents or more. And then you get a shot at Jen. I will make sure we may go old school. I don't know if I could do it with D. Kelley because I don't want any bad things to come her way, and I don't know the legalities. But we will go old school kissing booth if we need to. It's for the kids. We will put, but nah, just joking. No puns intended. But thank you guys for contributing. But without further ado, licensed in the bar, Florida State alumni. Dad used to protect Bobby Six. Son was with the baseball team. Like everything that you about as Seminole as they come. Like it's just one of a baddie. Super smart lady. Had one of the best shows. That she co-hosted. One of the best interviews with Mike Norvell. She was the one asking all the introspective questions. Danielle Kelley, aka I forgot the number. D. Kelley 21.
Yeah, I was about to say, how would you forget that after all those years?
Yeah, D. Kelley 21. Up here, I appreciate you for entertaining us and humoring us this late at night. I apologize for being late, but Ruth Chris was showing us hella love.
As they should. That team deserves it.
Yeah, we did some outside of the colors, the ugly colors I'm wearing. We did some really good things, and hopefully we'll get 3 kids in this next recruiting cycle. So, tell us a little bit about yourself for the people who don't follow social media, don't follow Twitter as heavily Just, let's get a quick introduction and why we should be listening to you.
Okay. Native Tallahassean, obviously still here. FSU grad, undergrad, and law school here. Like James said, my father was part of the FHP protective detail for Coach Bowden. So I grew up on those sidelines, not Mr. Billy Smith, not the Mr. Smith. But you always see 2 to 3 coaches around. My mother worked for the attorney's office at Florida State before becoming a judicial assistant to a federal judge here in Tallahassee. So I had the law background kind of down anyway and decided to go into that. I also do forecasts here. I'm also a meteorologist. I do forecasts here for Wave 94 and Real Talk 93.3. James and I used to have a show, a lot of 36 Degrees. We've had some amazing years and amazing interviews. Build a whole platform, starting to do, tell the stories of the legends and the history of Florida State. So obviously blessed in that angle. Legally, my career, I was a prosecutor out the box, out of law school, and then moved into civil law. I've handled class actions, actions against the government, anything you could possibly imagine in contract law, I think I've dealt with at this point, except, the new territory we're dealing with now. So, yeah.
So clearly she knows more than 99% of people on social media. So at this point, you probably should be tweeting this and saying, hey, let's get educated. Let's be able to talk. Because really what it comes down to, most of y'all just want to troll. So let's just talk about how we're going to do this. So the reason why we're here for the most part, I'm trying to figure out before I bury the lead. No, because you're not supposed to bury the lead in radio. But I know we're going to spend a shit ton of time talking about Florida State and the legal things that we're getting into. But let's talk about the things that affect us a little bit outside of that, if we can. And you were educating me on this. So there are two. If I'm going to be corrected, there are two things that we have to be looking forward to on the NCAA front. There's the Department of Justice case.
Yes.
That I know Bud Elliott was discussing a little bit about athletes being considered employees.
Yes.
And then there is so there's then let's talk about that first, and then I'm gonna let you say that big word that SAT word that I'm struggling with right now. So what is this NCAA case? And how might it affect, I guess in general, how might it affect student athletes in general?
Well, basically, the Department of Justice has gotten involved against the NCAA on an antitrust case that stemmed from a state. And it's the first state-led investigation that they've actually gotten involved with on this. A lot of all of this, and let's differentiate this and the House case. The House versus NCAA is a class action for damages to athletes over NIL that is progressing forward. That's the word, the interlocutory that you're talking about.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice getting involved in the other case is actually a pretty big deal. Like I said, it's the first time they've done it. Where the conferences are also involved in that. And it's all of this stems from, and we'll go back to the original Supreme Court decision. And I've preached this for years. People needed to be watching what happened in the Alston case when the Supreme Court finally came down and said, that's what allowed us to implement NIL, was that decision from the NCAA. So now you have the NCAA trying to regulate underneath a system that doesn't exist anymore. You have them trying to say they're not employees, but treating them as employees. I don't get to, rule you and be in control of whether or not you transfer or if you have a penalty or anything else and disparage you education or athletics wise and then make you sign non-competes. Basically, that's what it is. If you're my employee, I'm allowed to give you a non-compete agreement. You don't get to quit this job and go compete with me for 2 years afterwards. That's what the NCAA is trying to do. At the same time, they're claiming they're not employees. It goes back to the way they treated the whole situation in Alston. I'm not surprised. The Supreme Court smacked them there and said it was an antitrust violation. Common theme through what Florida State is going through, our Attorney General, our own lawsuit against the ACC, and that you'll keep hearing that word, antitrust. The whole system could potentially break down, and it's absolutely starting and coming off that Alston decision.
So talk to me. I hear I'm antitrust when it comes to the NCAA. I don't trust them any further than I could throw Doak
Word.
Campbell Stadium, but I'm not sure if I'm using this in the correct form. What is antitrust and why does it even matter? Why would we sue somebody for antitrust?
And this is, and without getting into politics, because I know a lot of people try to make this political, and I'm not getting into that. I will when it comes to Disney and stuff. But on that, this is a capitalist society. The market has a right to regulate itself. You are not allowed to have an unfair restraint on trade. You are not allowed to do shady stuff or hold people back to restrain trade. That is how, because a lot of people deal in what they read on Twitter and stuff. You have to understand lawyers, the judicial branch. We go by already passed law. We don't create law. We're interpreting what's already been passed. American jurisprudence in our cases say that's illegal. You can't do that. That goes back to the Anti-Sherman Act. I mean, go through law school. I mean, and read those cases. And that is why the Alston decision got passed, because it was an unfair restraint on trade. Now you look at the college football playoff at ESPN, all these factors that the attorney general's even asking for, us, with third parties in the ACC lawsuit, the NCAA DOJ issue, and then House versus the NCAA, which is the class action for damages for athletes based on NIL. It all rings the same. It comes back to the same premise. And that's, you can't regulate the market this way. You don't get to be a greedy corporation.
So it's kind of what a lot of nonprofits or big sports entities that get a lot of tax breaks and things such as the NFL, MLB, NBA, and obviously the NCAA. They fear this because it could break it up and to create competition due to greed. But so that's something, again, I don't think a lot of people kind of understood to why. So like when people say you sign a contract or you're doing this, get over it. Basically, you are you aren't necessarily understanding how a capitalistic society works. So I'm grateful for you to get there. There are terms, and words do have meanings. So we need to make sure that we're understanding what it is that we're up against or what it is that we're seeing. So while the ACC and while Florida State is fighting their own, it's kind of like again, this is me being a nerd. I apologize. Yes, I am a nerd, people. I am a comic book nerd. I love Marvel movies, but it's kind of cool. So you got the Avengers, right? The Avengers are fighting in battle. They're fighting like gods and aliens and all these other different things, right? But then you got this multiverse thing that's happening where all these battles are happening in different universes that are similar of the world, and then you got the galactic battles that are fighting like that are on a way bigger stage where like people eating whole planets and shit. So okay, so I went to the nerd battle here. So you got, yes, Florida State is fighting their ACC battle, but then there's the multiverse battle that's happening with Congress and the NCAA, which encompasses every fucking conference, which each conference can be considered their own world that has similar different things and things like of that nature. That would be the Department of Justice that's fighting that one, right? Yeah. Then Congress is fighting on a whole nother level that's even bigger about the money situation with the interlocutory.
Interlocutory appeal. The House case, like I said, the athletes that have basically filed a class action to recover damages based on NIL violations, broadcasts, stuff like that. The class got certified. I will tell you, and then, the NCAA has kind of panicked and took up what we call an interlocutory appeal. Appellate courts usually are reviewing final judgments coming from a lower court. That's what they do. They review the lower court level. They review the decision. Put it this way, if somebody is accused of a crime and in jail on a final judgment, they were found guilty at trial, an appeal goes up, the court is reviewing the lower court's final decision. An interlocutory appeal means you're taking something up before it's even final because the case is still going on. It's another grasp from the NCAA to say, shut this down. Shut this down. Very similar to what the ACC just tried to do in an amended complaint with an injunction. Shut this down and don't let it proceed any longer. The NCAA would have been smart to settle that case before it even got to this level, because as somebody who's done class actions, I can tell you this. Once you get a class certified, the corporation you're getting a class certified against does not want their dirty laundry coming out. They don't want their documents coming out, and they will settle immediately because they know they're already done.
Thus, as we titled the other show, and I've learned and I have fun with it, and I've seen in other things, discovery is a motherfucker. So like it's very like the stuff you learn in discovery isn't always, it doesn't even have to deal with the case. You just learn some really salacious and juicy details that you have to hope that the people who have that sheet of paper only keep it, like don't accidentally leave their computer open as somebody else walks by it and sees it, or as they're throwing away papers that they don't shred properly. That those things don't happen as well. So it was that case, is that women. So is there back pay? Like, do athletes, is it kind of like the O'Bannon deal? When O'Bannon won, I was able to get a check from the NCAA. It wasn't a lot of money, but I got a little bit of a check. So they'll go back and say, hey, you're owed every student athlete that's been a part of this X amount of dollars.
Yes, I mean, potentially over $4 billion in damages, which would cripple the NCAA completely, as if they're not already being crippled by their own actions everywhere else. So, I mean, it's one of those deals where if this continues to go, and that's why they're fighting the way they are. They don't want this coming out. It's if you look at the analogy, it's very similar to what the ACC is doing as well.
Right. So that's what. So those are some things that I just wanted to make sure that people understood that were happening in the background. And so even if Florida State and the ACC are in this situation that is deadlocked, and as everybody's saying, oh my God, this could take, the people who aren't understanding that the means to the end is to get Florida State out of a conference. They really don't give a damn how to get to it. If the ACC just literally just came up today and said, all right, if I let you leave, will you stop bothering me? We probably will just let it go. So, but, and I think that's probably where it's going to end at the end of the day. But when I look at, all this other stuff, they could be fighting that battle, and if the NCAA loses the war, it doesn't really matter. This is all frivolous anyway. Without the NCAA and the representative in the NCAA, there's probably going to be a host of other consequences that will happen that will definitely affect the Atlantic Coast Conference. So going into us and the Atlantic Coast Conference, can you please tell me what is your how do we, and I told Rohan with Rohan Law to give us how do we get here. So can you kind of give us in your own summary, how did Florida State and the ACC get to the position in which we're in currently?
Short answer, inept leadership. Long answer, basically, and I know I've explained this before, the ACC got really nervous with Maryland leaving, and they decided to do a higher withdrawal penalty, escalated that. That wasn't enough, apparently. Maryland left regardless, just like we're trying to now. And then they start negotiating with ESPN. ESPN signs that extension unilaterally. All that stuff was going on behind the scenes that Florida State wasn't aware of. So we get there based on, and I know everybody understands the story, the Swofford leadership, everything that was going on. I know everybody understands it by now. Basically, Florida State entered into an agreement with the ACC Florida State also entered into a grant of rights with the ACC. The ACC, as a fiduciary role, and let's explain that really quick. Contracts require a meeting of the minds. Contracts require what we call consideration. You have to get something out of that contract, and I have to get something out of that contract. Otherwise, it's one-sided. If I have things in my contract that I leave up to you to do on my behalf, you have to do things to my benefit, just like I have to do things to your benefit. The words are living and active in a contract always. The ACC took on the fiduciary role of extending the ESPN deadline without any input from Florida State or the other members, and it's a failing. I mean, if you look overall at the deal that ESPN has signed with the SEC now, and how the ACC has been treated, they have violated every fiduciary aspect they could. Not to mention that there wasn't really consideration in that. A lot of shady stuff with all of that. As you know, you guys have heard about Raycom, you've heard about Swafford, and everything that was going on there. Florida State just finally got to the point where they said, enough. That's enough. As a fiduciary, you have to do things to my benefit, and the ACC has failed on multiple aspects.
So fiduciary responsibilities, basically, in layman's term, they act as our pseudo agent, and making sure that fiscally we're up to par. Now, with fiduciary responsibility, typically and with something that's similar, is there typically like an industry practice to where you can kind of look at and say, hey, here's examples of where people did it right, and then there's like, so this is perfect, and then there's us, the example of doing it completely wrong and inept. Is that something that you would, when you're making your case, you would bring those different things up to be able to present in front of a judge?
Absolutely. And you'll bring it up from different areas of case law too. You could do it from wills. You can do it from any kind of area of law where somebody's acting, and because lawyers work in facts, then we will compare precedent to other cases as well. However, you also have precedent in this with the Pac-12 and inept leadership and things that went on there. So that's also, and then what ESPN on a whole nother angle, what ESPN tried to do with the Big 12 when they realized they were losing that battle, and ended up having to try to bust the whole GOR and issue cease and desist letters. So we work in that precedent. Those are two huge issues in this new landscape that I would bring up. Other than that, but like you said, I would go back to other areas of law and other fiduciary responsibilities that are in every contract. Basically, they're inherent in your obligations to do what's best for me, as they are. I have to do what's best for you.
Okay, you just brought up something that was pretty pretty significant. Can you brought up the Big 12. I want to treat this like you're reading a deposition and we don't know what the hell you're talking about. Can you talk to us about this Big 12 thing that you just brought up, and exactly what is it, as I try to pull up this picture?
Okay. Yes, that was a report in 2021 that came out when the Big 12 was losing members. As we know, stuff was starting to implode kind of around that time. We had schools, two schools out of all these areas over there trying to go to the SEC. As everybody knows, we had people eventually going to the Big, and we had the Big 12 as well. ESPN got to the point where they realized they may be losing money on this. Everybody has to remember, at this point in time, Disney was also having problems with ESPN and the financial situation that was going on with them. They were starting to get irritated. Wall Street even reflected part of the sell-off from ESPN, from Disney of ESPN, and employees got laid off actually as a result. This was ESPN's way of trying to say, okay, we'll just go ahead and kill this deal. And the Big 12, actually, kudos to the Big 12 though. And I think that's a thing. A lot of people thought we were going to end up in a 2-conference system out the gate. The Big 12 actually fought back really hard to solidify their position legally and trying to get new teams. So ESPN was very desperate at that point just to get rid of that grant of rights. It's kind of ironic when you look that they're fighting over ours, but it makes sense. If Florida State leaves, this is the kind of stuff you need to expect them to pull with the rest of the ACC members.
So how would this? So if the ESPN is looking out for their best interest, how is this illegal, or is this something that would be like kind of like collusion, tampering, or something like that, for them trying to be able to get out of a contract that's already done? So like, how, I guess, talk to me, like, how is this? Why is this bad? Why is this bad for ESPN side? And yeah, let's say that first, and then I'll save my next question for after, for how you answer that.
It's bad for ESPN side because they're starting to show a pattern of practice of how they're dealing with things behind the scenes, and it is collusion. At this point, I mean, if it was in Florida, they're doing business in the state of Florida, I would always file counts what I call civil conspiracy. You have to have a third party involved in that. ESPN is definitely a third party involved in that. That is a definite, I mean, conspiracies are only, conspiracies if they're not true, I guess. But that shows exactly what they tried to do to the Big 12 when they realized they were losing. When Florida State leaves the ACC, which I think they will, they're going to try to do the same thing here because they're losing money in the end. And it shows collusion on their part, their willingness to go behind the scenes and try to violate their own contracts they're signing up for, regardless. And I was told, I have a friend that used to work for ESPN, and we talked when all this happened in the beginning. And, it was made clear to me that ESPN is a part of RGOR, not a party to RGOR. Doesn't matter. There's still a third party involved in this, and it shows collusion on their end to try to violate their own contracts.
Wow. So it's kind of that one. I hate this terminology, but it's once a cheater, always a cheater. So if you did it
Yep.
once, you could potentially do it again, which is why Discovery. And like, again, as I told somebody before, like, why would they sue? Because they won't tell us if we don't. Discovery is a motherfucker, people. You got to remember, we might put that on shirts. Like we don't know what there's known knowns, and then there's unknown knowns. Then there's unknown unknowns, the things that we don't know that we don't know. And the only way we can know about the unknown unknowns is if we sue you, because you're not going to just hand it over. I'm pretty sure ESPN didn't just say, hey, I'm going, like, they didn't do it in public. They didn't say, hey, Kansas, don't sign this new contract with them, the Big 12. Like, they probably did it backhanded and through different variations and stuff of that nature. So we kind of know of dirty tactics and things of that nature, which would be fun, because if we found that out with the ACC, with actually going into GOR, we'll find out that other stuff here in a second, and why it would be bad. What is GOR? And that's obviously something that's common amongst all conferences when it comes to rights deals. I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's completely common, and that's why we're, even talking about the Big 12 and ESPN having a GOR. You're basically giving away your media rights through a certain time period to someone else. In this case, for us, it would be to the ACC, but we're giving away our media rights, involving the GOR. The copy we all see that it was obtained is very short. It's like 2 pages if you've seen it online. And if memory serves, and I keep saying this because I remember the article clearly, I have it saved somewhere. It was obtained by a North Carolina reporter on a public records request to get that document. That GOR is short because it continually, and let's go back to consideration for a second, every contract has to have something that serves to bind it. You got to get something, and I got to get something. The GOR is short, and the only consideration listed in that is the ESPN agreement. That's it. It keeps going over. It says for other good consideration or without other consideration. I mean, it's very vague, but it refers back to the ESPN agreement. And that's the big deal. That's the contract you don't have. That's the one we don't see. That's the one the ACC amended the complaint to prevent the public from getting.
Okay, so now going into what we're, oh dang, I forgot about this. So pause this for a second. CFB playoff committee gave up. They surrendered the I guess surrendered certain documents to our attorney general.
Yes. She has. I've read that she has some, but the college football playoff is still, I guess, in the process of providing more. She asked for a lot. I mean, she really did. She was across the board on it, as is her right as an elected official in the state of Florida who is sworn to uphold Florida law.
So with that, now that she has this, the little bit she has, and as she attains more, and let's say in a few weeks she decides that she comes to a decision that she wants to sue, or that the state wants to sue the college football playoff committee, or whatever steps that the state determines that they want to go. And for people who are not Floridians, I would implore you to understand this. Our governor is it's not a I hate he's not a he's not a lame duck governor by any means. He's literally trying to get points in the basket for him running for president. There is not a damn thing. We know he's in office at minimum for 2 more years, for this year and then next year. So he's got a loaded gun for the gunshot state that he's got direct and a hard on for both Disney, for basically kind of losing to Disney, which anybody could have told him that would have been tough. But now he has a better angle to go at Disney, as well as the college football playoff committee. We have these laws that we were talking about in the previous show that neither one of me or Dave were Mr. Rohan were knowledgeable enough to speak on. And seeing as you are an attorney in the state of Florida, what are these laws named, and what exactly does it mean, and how do you what kind of ramifications does it have for these kind of lawsuits right here?
A lot. This is something that actually came up on Twitter the other night. I don't think people understand the Sunshine Law and how wide open it really is. It's something Florida takes very seriously. I have sued state agencies before. I've represented state officers before against state agencies as well. I've sued state agencies for personal injury kind of things. Public records requests always come with that. You have to turn those documents over. It's a big deal. This is chapter 119 of Florida statutes for all my little Twitter lawyers that would like to read it. You have to provide those documents unless it falls under an exemption. The exemptions are also in that statute, very long. It'll cover everything from, sex crime victim information to bidding when it comes to government contracts to everything. I don't see how the ACC gets around not providing a contract done. Florida State is a public university. A contract done by officials working on behalf of the university in their capacity as state employees with the ACC and ESPN. So the contract needs to be turned over. That is part of Florida law.
So this is part of why discovery is a motherfucker. So if let's say hypothetically speaking, this is the University of Miami, and University of Miami was tired. They were going through GOR. They were going to go through the process of suing, getting themselves out of the ACC. Do Florida Sunshine State laws apply to them as a private university as they do to Florida State, or is it just for any kind of law case?
No, not necessarily. And this is actually a subject that started coming up in 2000 with the COVID restrictions. You had students actually suing universities because of, unjust enrichment, stuff like that. They were paying for things, and they weren't able to live in their homes, dorms, or whatever, or go to class. Everything was online. Some cases got decided one way, some cases got decided another way. The majority side on that is public universities. I think that's probably why Miami's going to sit back and let us take the arrows on this because they don't have the capacity to do what we're doing. It also makes us the test case because everybody knows how wide open Florida public records laws are, and we're in a battle with the ACC.
So with the ACC probably now with the ACC suing us in North Carolina, the ACC is suing. I don't know how we're written up, but I know in California, it'd be it's the University of California, Southern Los Angeles. You have the University of California schools. I know we're not the University of Florida State. We're Florida State University, but we're all a part of the same state university public school system. So they can sue us in North Carolina.
Yes.
But if we get stuff in discovery and it's within the Sunshine State rules or whatever we have to put over fork over, it's literally wide open for anything. And do NDAs, like, can an NDA be valid if I'm suing a government entity?
That's a great question. If by an agreement of that nature if it violates already existing law, could absolutely be invalid on its face. Period. And I would argue that because you can't do an agreement that violates law as it's already passed and written. That would be like us agreeing to commit a crime. If that makes sense. You can't do it.
It's kind of like I can go confess all my sins to a Catholic priest and no, he's not supposed to say anything, but if I kill somebody, he's gotta turn me in. That's the one thing he can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I've committed a heinous violent crime, they can't not turn those things in.
Legality is a defense to contracts completely, and that's kind of what we're running into when it comes to non-disclosure agreements potentially, and the potential violation of the Sunshine Law.
Now with case law, right? So this is how a lot of things get tried. This is why I could not be an attorney unless I had a really good research team, because this is the boring shit. Now, if you tell me about it, I can figure it out. But typically, when you're going to fight a case, you look for similar cases. So, like, this basically is giving every other. So the crazy part is that they're giving whatever other college in the state of Florida that's in any conference the blueprint to get out of any contract that they want to. Like, because let's say the University of Florida's tired of being in the SEC, and maybe Florida State went to the Big Ten, and they need they like their regional rivalries, and they need another rivalry. They want Florida and Florida State in the same conference. So Florida goes to the SEC, and they know, and now they can have case law in both North Carolina and in Florida, they'll have case law that they can't do anything. That would be correct.
Yes. I mean, you could end up with a different, precedent in different areas. I know when I cite cases, I try to cite from my own circuit, my own DCA, my own area, because that is binding on my court, as the other courts and other jurisdictions are just merely persuasive, I guess, is what you could argue. If it's a new issue, I can argue, hey, but this circuit in California did whatever, and Florida hasn't ruled on it yet. I've been in that position before. I actually won an appeal with the First District Court of Appeal and got them to certify conflict with the Fourth DCA because I was arguing that our circuit does things differently, and that's just within Florida. So yeah, you absolutely can. You can end up with, conflicting law in different jurisdictions.
Damn, I wish I could block. So I was about to block my first member. Shout out to Bosco. Bosco, you are in timeout for being approved. Now you are in timeout for 24 minutes. We don't want your membership, sir. I just want you to understand that it's $3.99. Keep it. If you don't get the joke, just don't be. This is not the place to be sensitive. Good stuff with that. So Nevin. Shout out to Nevin. This is how you get this is how whites get a good question right here. So this is a question we have right here. Use these words. Does preemptive litigation actions from the ACC serve as a placeholder as they wait for FSU to state their case given Sunshine's law requirements? Can you do that thing with the words where you break this down to layman's terms? For us people who don't really know much.
If this is about who filed first, I'm assuming it
Yeah.
is because the ACC filed first and we filed second. No, it's not a placeholder, and it doesn't change anything. Simply put, Florida Sunshine Law is Florida Sunshine Law. Even if all this ends up in a federal court somewhere, on state claims, federal court is going to have to take notice of what Florida law is and apply it. And our law is our law. It's not a placeholder by far. I don't even think it matters that much. Another fact that a lot of people forget is we have rules of civil procedure in each state. If I'm filing a complaint, if I'm defending a position, I have an obligation to provide proof, not only in discovery, I do it with my complaints. I mean, if you've ever read one of my complaints, I'm exhibit A, B, C, D, I'll go through the whole alphabet on it because I'm showing the court I'm putting forth a good faith argument. The ACC did a preemptive strike. I don't think in the end it's going to matter at all. We have an obligation to provide the whole truth through discovery, through attaching exhibits, whatever. And Florida law is going to remain Florida law on that, no matter what. The Sunshine Law will have to be applied.
So as this goes on, which I believe this will be settled in some way, shape, or form, and as we came to a conclusion, as we deduced in the last legal show that we had, that Florida State's leaving the ACC. It could be 2025 or it could be 2036. But what we know is that Florida State will not be in the ACC in the notable future, based upon what the ACC has done from a fiduciary standpoint, but also from a legal standpoint by suing us first and not even trying to go and do what the Big 12 did as we go on. Now, but let's say this, I think a settlement happens. And I think it happens quicker, and then they'll probably try to rally behind certain things. And we came up with this idea that the more money they try to get a war chest. Obviously, let's say Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, a lot of the public schools end up leaving, and they pay their 150 million, 200 million, whatever the case may be, buyouts. The ACC has something that they can at least be able to use to attract other teams or spread out resources to schools as they feel they may lose some value in the next television negotiation rights, as ESPN holds all of the cards. But let's say we don't come to that. What are the steps that typically happen in a civil lawsuit that, again, would have to all come to light due to Florida Sunshine State laws? Like, what are the things? What's the process that happens when you're going to court?
When you're going to court, and we're kind of in this period right now where the ACC has not answered the Florida complaint here in Florida yet. They did file a notice of appearance and got a law firm here to represent them. That's no big deal. That's typical. And we have to answer their complaint in North Carolina. That can be done. Motions can be filed at any time before the answer period. They will have to. An answer is just basically, yeah, you look at their allegations and you yes or no. We call it admitted or denied, or without knowledge therefore denied, that kind of fun stuff. Affirmative defenses would have to be filed at that time too. What affirmative defenses are is what we call yeah buts. Yeah, I did it, but I have a good defense. So that kind of stuff would have to be filed. And I'm not sure. I think with the fact that both are fighting over jurisdiction and venue too, and those issues right now, and I've said this before, Florida State's venue and jurisdiction clause was very short and sweet to the point, cited the correct Florida statute saying, hey, we're here. This is our circuit. The ACC took 3 pages to try to explain theirs. James, because I know you. If you can say it simply, then you're probably right. If you have to take 3 to 4 pages to explain it, then you're probably wrong. So I think ultimately, regardless of state, this is going to end up maybe in federal court. I don't think it's going to matter. But I think that what we're waiting on now with venue and jurisdiction is either side to file a motion on that regard. Nobody has yet. So, I mean, that will have to be decided. Other than that, we're just going to answer the complaint and go forward.
Now, with Florida Sunshine State laws, one of the things that has to happen is we have to have before that, with civil courts and civil any kind of trial, you have to be able to figure out who your witnesses are, and you have to get your opportunity to be able to speak to said witnesses. These things are called depositions. With depositions, they're both they're recorded in two different manners. There's videotape, and then there's the person who types very, very fast. And I have no idea. I think they don't get paid enough, because to be able to process the dialects and the words that everybody are saying and spell correctly is a skill that deserves to be paid a lot more. Now, we're deposing Swafford because he would have to obviously be deposed because he's the guy who initially did this. His son, who they have the relationship with, Raycom, the current ACC chairman. Let's say we wanted to get the NC State's president, as he's on the college football playoff committee. Different people. As we put these people on here, what is a deposition? What takes place in a deposition? And then because that information will be used as that Florida State would have to get that information. More than likely, it would be emailed to somebody at an @fsu.edu email address, which is a government email address, or say our attorney general gets involved or whatever, she gets her government email address. Is that deposition and all those materials now privy to Florida Sunshine State laws?
Depositions are different. They are not admissible in court, and there are exemptions in the Sunshine State laws for work product court kind of things, because that stuff is protected under law anyway. But what a deposition is basically I get to call whatever witnesses I want to that are related to any of the facts in my case. You get to go in a room with a court reporter like James is talking about. Yes, they do not make enough money for the hours they put in. My longest deposition, I think, was like 12 hours. But yeah, and I can ask you any questions you want, and your attorney gets to, go redirect, is what we call it, ask you questions after I'm done. And there's a record of that. That record is not admissible in court. However, it's one of these premises lawyers live by. Don't ever ask somebody a question when you don't already know the answer. I want to have questioned you before I ever deal with you on a witness stand. So I will have your deposition, and if I catch you lying, I can impeach you with your testimony, because the deposition is sworn testimony, although it's not admissible in court. So, but it is part of the discovery process. It's a very valuable part of the discovery process that allows us to gain information.
Gotcha. If you want to know it's a cool deposition. These guys where the person being deposed probably gets the better of the attorney, which really, as I found out, they really don't like that. They do not like when you're kind of sarcastic and stuff like that. But Barstow, David Portnoy has a deposition that made itself go viral, and Lil Wayne had a deposition as well. So if you want to see what those are, but as D. Kelley said, they're not necessarily fun. I didn't do 12 hours. I could have done 12 hours. It would have been very bad for everybody if I'd have had to sit in that room for 12 hours.
Well, the thing about depositions is, and they are longer, some of them, this was a really big case, and it was me and the other attorney going back and forth. That's why it lasted so long. But you have to answer every question I ask. Mm-hmm. You don't get to object. You have to answer everything. That's why they're not admissible in court, because I'm not certain things you could object to in court and you won't have to answer. But in a deposition, I have free reign to do whatever I want, show you whatever I want. And and then you take the stand in court. And if I catch you lying, then guess what? I have a certified copy of the deposition in my hand.
Free game by big game. Keep your answers as short. If you ever have to go through that situation, keep your answers as short as possible. The more words you use. And I've seen a lot of you guys tweet and get in debates with a lot of you guys on Twitter. You guys talk too much. You do not know you do not remember what you say. That's why I always tell people, if I'm to ever get in trouble, I will do my dirt all by my lonely. I don't want any of you guys as co-defendants. We're all going to jail, because some of y'all don't remember what you said 5 minutes ago, let alone all this other stuff. But then you go to they try to get you to go to at least in the state of Florida, it's required before you go. At least that's what I was told. It's required that you go to now I can't think of the name of it.
mediation,
which is just as bad. You actually are going through all of this stuff. They don't even feed you. They gave me nothing but cake, the little bundt cakes, and some terrible coffee. I was so mad. And nobody informed me that I was required to have to pay a percentage of this. Like, I was mad. I was pissed off. What if I didn't have that money to pay that guy? So I was on the hook for it, but you do go through mediation where you actually get a chance to, like, now this is also, like, I think the guy said we have this, it gives us the opportunity to talk, but it's not court. Like, we won't, like, say whatever you got to say, because it won't be used against you, even though I'm still mad about that guy, because, again, the coffee was bad. If the coffee was better, I wouldn't have been as mad. But
who is that mediator? Mine cater lunches. Like, I don't know.
They told us, we came in at 1:00, and they told us that we just missed it. And I was there from 1 to fucking 6, and I had nothing but a couple bundt cakes. And they're the small ones, and I can't eat. I'm diabetic. I can't even eat like that. I don't want to say what I paid for that day, but I know for the amount of money that I paid, I should have been able to get what I just ate with these young men at Ruth Chris. I should have been able to get wine and dine a little bit better, but whatever. I digress. But you got to go through all of these different processes, and the crazy part is that when you go through these processes, you learn these things, and you have, as I keep suggesting, you have to hope that people aren't pillow talking, running their mouth, and doing other different things. Personally, a lot of, again, discovery is how people don't think discovery is anything. Forget Sunshine State laws. Mm-hmm. If you want to know a great way of how discovery can affect people where they had no bearing on the case. See, John Gruden getting fired. How does John Gruden getting fired by the Las Vegas Raiders have anything to do with the Washington Commanders' sex scandal?
That's discovery.
Discovery happened, and this has nothing to do with this case. Washington Post, just something magically appears on a reporter's doorstep, or a reporter said, "Hey, man, there's a lead," because this happens all the time in the industry of media. We get a lead, and we're told that a lead comes from a source, and you never burn your sources. And your source tells you to go find something and search for something. Then you search and you find, and then all of a sudden, now you have a lot of clicks that are going to happen, and more things are going to happen, which is why they don't want to go to discovery. Because the Florida State has essentially, from my perspective, even though I love my university, we have said, fuck this conference. We are going to get out by any means necessary, even if it means we have to light the match and burn this motherfucker down as we walk out of here. We do not care what to quote Mike Alford, we will not be at a $30 million disadvantage to our rival. As he said, I believe it was over the summer, or when we first had our board of trustees meeting, which again, that has to be public because of Florida Sunshine State laws, correct? Is that why we have to? So
it's a board of trustees meeting in the ACC. The official, when you read the caption to the case, they are suing the Florida State University Board of Trustees.
So now, what does that mean? Is that their way of thinking they're not? Are the Board of Trustees, are they still a government entity?
Yeah. Or is this something this is all connected. These are people acting on behalf of the university. They have the power and the capacity to vote to get us out of this conference and subject us to damages by doing so. Yes, absolutely. That would be considered part of that.
Now, another question. Man, it's not immunity. Well, you can only sue. You said what? What is it?
Sovereign immunity.
Is that when you can only sue a government institution for so much money?
Yes.
Okay. How does that affect? Does that affect Florida State? And if it does, how does it affect Florida State? Is it because of when both cases have been filed, even if legislation gets passed? Let's say, because we've seen this happen before. Legislation gets presented in session and gets passed and gets enacted July 1st. Is there a way that, if they expand it, would it protect the university, or is the university already covered? And before all of that, can you explain to us exactly what sovereign immunity is?
Sovereign immunity is an idea from the 11th Amendment of the Bill of Rights, which is incorporated against the state. I mean, the Constitution, I mean, everything is incorporated against the states by the Bill of Rights. And you guys know what the Bill of Rights are. Those are your famous amendments you all like to talk about. The 11th Amendment, in so many words, let me kind of simplify this. You can't sue the United States in a United States court. It's a conflict. It basically is. You can't sue the state of Florida in a state court. And yes, the university is involved in that. There is a cap on damages on that. It's a huge issue in law that we all discuss a lot, about immunity for, and in my experience, mostly dealt with law enforcement agencies, stuff like that, counties, cities, arms of the state versus political subdivisions. It just know this, it's simplified. It's a big area of law. And yes, a public university could fall under that if the officials were doing things in the scope of their duties as state employees, and there would be a cap on damages. Now, that's going to be a really interesting question because I can't simplify that too much. It's really legal when you get into what are the claims. What are the claims? Because then there are ways around sovereign immunity. Absolutely. I've had to sue law enforcement officers before for state agencies, and I would have to use Section 1983 of federal law to get around the caps on sovereign immunity. That's the way, it works. There's always a way around it, but as of right now, they have the obligation to overcome that, is what I'm trying to say, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. It's something that will be used in play, but something that may or may not protect us in all of those different things. Because I remember, and that's why I asked if because, and this is where again, there are people who are Florida State fans who are not Floridians, and there are people who are not Florida State fans who are Floridians and are not. But I promise you, we have a very, 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 whether you, not to be political, I could care less if you vote. He's our governor regardless, and he's he's a lawyer. He's a former legal member, and he wants to win. And so if there was new law to expand that, which I think would be a gross, I think would be terrible in the grand scheme of things, even though it could be a victory for Florida State. Is that something that if they enacted it would, like say they just made sure that athletics are covered in this, would be fine? Would Florida State be fine, or would it be like, all right, too little too late because that just happened this year?
Whew, that gets into retroactive and all that kind of stuff. I think Florida State would be fine regardless at this point. I think we drew a line in the sand and we've made stuff clear on how we stand and stuff. And I think, I mean, I don't even know if I'm potentially answering your question correctly at this point. I think that I agree. And I think I think Florida State has done everything they need to do and they're going to be fine progressing forward. I'm not worried about retroactivity on a lot right now.
Gotcha. John Knoll, again, John Knoll is right now one of my favorite members. He got a membership. He wasn't offended. He got his member, became a greenie, made other people greenies, and then he paid for a comment, which he didn't have to. His question is, if we are using sunshine law as a reason we had to disclose, wouldn't that backfire in a settlement, as ACC would only do because they want those terms secret?
No, I actually think that makes our position more advantageous. They don't want that out. So I don't see that as a backfire on a settlement. I think the ACC would want to be more inclined to settle. I don't know, because the back end of the question actually sounds like exactly what I'm trying to describe. They would want that kept secret, so that's incentive to settle. And then, like James talked about, we're going to get into non-disclosures and all that stuff on that, if I'm making sense at this point. But sunshine law is not going to have anything to do with it. That stuff's going to come out in discovery anyway, and the ACC knows it. And
I think the sunshine law is basically us bringing a gun to a knife fight, knowing that we have the law on our side. Because here's the thing: the Florida State, not Florida State, ACC. There's a reason why you can only peek at the media contract with ESPN, and everybody does not have a copy of it, which is typically. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle. Anytime we do a contract, both parties have to have a copy of the signed contract. Is that, am I right or wrong about that?
They do. And that's the thing with the Sunshine Law. A lot of people are like, how is this going to come up? And they're talking about lawsuits. The way this would actually come up is Florida State, as a state entity, has an obligation and a duty to provide information on a public records request. Translation, think about it for a minute. If one of you do a public records request to Florida State for the ESPN agreement, I'm not advising you to do that. Everybody in Florida is allowed to do it. But if you do that, Florida State can't do their job because they are being prohibited from doing so. That's another violation of the fiduciary thing and everything else we're talking about that they've done, because we don't have that and we can't provide it. And they're actually suing us actively in North Carolina for an injunction to prevent us from being able to do so. So, I mean, that's where it does get tricky, because you can sue for a Sunshine Law violation. You absolutely can.
Here's another question, which I believe, would we have to share the settlement? Or do settlements and certain fiscal things protected in Sunshine State law?
They're absolutely. There are exemptions, like I said, to the Sunshine Law, a whole huge list of them. Y'all can read through it. It's in chapter 119. And yeah, that would be settlements are excluded. Settlements are not allowed to be disclosed. The only time we're allowed to disclose settlements is if you hire me as a lawyer because somebody violated a settlement agreement, and I have to produce that to the court to explain, hey, the whole lawsuit is about they violated this settlement agreement. And that would be a future case down the line. Kind of the same thing for Florida State right now. If ESPN and the ACC are claiming privilege and this is going to be private, Florida State is saying, you have to produce this so we can argue. You have to let us see it so we can argue. And they're fighting that.
Which is ironic. I can't fight you if I don't know what we're fighting. I can't prove that. Again, this is why I was telling you, why sue when you feel like you're going to lose? Well, I don't know if I'm going to lose if I don't sue, because they're not just giving me the information in which I should already have. Also, if that is probably produced, there would more than likely be a leak of that contract, or even so, if it's not a leak of the contract, in conversations, which conversations happen between colleagues. Let's say the Mike Alford, I'm not saying Mike would do this, but Mike Alford is our athletic director, so there's no reason to pretend and use fictional names. Is hanging out with North Carolina's athletic director, and he's just like, hey, did you know that ESPN is only giving us 4.5% of this little bit of money that we're getting? Now, those are already terms that we already know. But he can actually give like a actual, that we're like we can't even negotiate for the second deal that the SEC got since they've been in here. And North Carolina's athletic director wasn't privy to that information. Now they're armed with more to be able to get out. Now, we talked about you've done class actions, and I brought this up before. Is there a way that if, let's say, Duke's private, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida State, and Clemson, all state schools, decided that they all wanted to, instead of starting separate cases, they all decided to join together and file class action against the ACC. Is that something that really makes sense in this situation? Or is that something that just kind of like, nah, we actually would want them to file separate lawsuits and spread the funds thin?
Speaking of, objectively on this, I would rather them file separately. I think it shows a stronger case than everybody is. A class action to me in that sense is just everybody's saying, well, we're scared, because Florida State's going to get out of this. So we're just going to lump on and agree. And then it gives the ACC an argument to say, see, FSU's ruining the conference. So, it's one of those things where I would rather just go this alone at this point and let them go it alone as well. That's how I feel.
This is more of a statement. 850 knows for life. How in the world in our country is it even legal to hide a contract from one of the persons in/on the contract? Makes no sense how secret and locked away this thing is. Which is again one of the beautiful things when people said it's why one, if you haven't learned anything, and again, I like to have people to be able to back up things that I say. I only give you guys game from things that I've had to experience the hard way. Again, to quote one of my favorite rappers, nah, Hov did that. So hopefully you won't have to go through that. But it's good to have lawyers here. There is no such thing as a perfect contract, a contract that cannot be broken. But it's even more so crappy, like proves that it's crappy if you don't want the other person not only to not see what you negotiated on their behalf, you didn't even make them privy to it because, if I remember correctly, Swafford agreed to this deal without any other people being present, privy to the information, and things of that nature.
Exactly. So why would we even be surprised that they're not providing us with a copy of the contract? I mean, they were doing unilateral behind the scenes stuff anyway. That's who they are. The ACC is still acting like the ACC. Florida State is just actually in a position right now to show the world how inept this is and how bad this is. And I'm going to tell you straight up, non-lawyer speaking, I'm hella proud we are.
Yeah,
I love it.
Listen, it's when you have a governor that says, "I'm gonna shoot you a cool meal," just for off the strength. For my people that don't, that's slang for saying, "Here you go. Here's some bread. Here's some money. Have at it." That's just again, you don't. The problem is with all of the information that we know, we don't know. Like we have to. Like it's you kind of, and with the nature of how college football is going to merging back to a Pangea for all of my geology guys, but people who remember that's kind of how our world created itself. We split apart from it, but now we're slow. And I guess actually plates are making us go back together. So that's what college football is going to, where there will be two super conferences in our lifetime, where there's only one way for us to even be able to get into that. And when that happens, for us to be able to be competitive, you cannot have, so we're in 2024, 2036, you cannot have 12 years of being at a 30 and increasing, forever increasing million deficit for by the time you're able to be on a level playing field to be able to perform at a high level when they're $300 million ahead of you, which obviously will probably be more, especially if we are truly, which I think it's funny, and I think I will admit it. I know what creative fiscal reports look like, but we are $23 million in the hole if we are to believe that from athletics, which the major cost of it being tuition, which is Florida State paying Florida State for Florida State athletes to go to school. So, but anyways, that's another topic. They can argue that part in court. I don't need to give them the ammunition for that. Does this, Ricky, again, I need you to be a greenie, but man, that's a very good question. I appreciate you, Ricky Goodman. Will this lawsuit help any future deals made with future conferences, or would they be hesitant to want us? I guess seeing us as a troublemaker, or in your opinion, obviously you may not know, would Florida State, with what you do know about the guys who would make these moves, these great businessmen, these great legal men, these guys who have a fiduciary responsibility to Florida State, even make a move like this if they did not feel like they had something, a place for a golden parachute for us to land, say we get out of this contract?
I believe we have a place to land. I will say that. I do not think I think Florida State drew a line in the sand to the point where they were willing to say, we'll go independent if we have to. But like you said about the Board of Trustees meeting in August, we ain't doing And I'm like the Southern lawyer. Y'all know me. I say ain't and fixin'. Y'all get to deal with it. We ain't doing a $30 million deficit. So, I think we do. But the conferences can't get involved with us right now because that brings up a whole nother cause. The ACC is already throwing everything against the wall and hoping something sticks right now against us anyway. You don't want to give them an argument for tortious interference with a contract. That kind of goes back to the civil conspiracy thing I mentioned earlier. That's basically where you're alleging a third party is involved trying to violate. I usually file those claims simultaneously with each other on a case because it means a third party is involved violating the law. So
that was the word I was trying to remember. That's a word that I've had to learn 5 years ago for the last 5 years. I thought that man was caught saying I interfered with some pasta. That's tortellini. It's not tortious interference. I was like, what the? I said, I don't know what the hell the tortellini has to do with me in a civil lawsuit, but that is a very serious thing. And in the state of Florida, which could even be more detrimental, which is why I do believe what Jeff Hill just asked, will this get settled before court? Because if you're going down the lines of tortious interference and you can prove it, that means Florida State could potentially be not only responsible for whatever other BS, we could be responsible for legal fees. But the reverse could also be true because if we win, then they're responsible for whatever damages that are concluded by the court and whatever our legal fees our guys decide that they want to charge. I don't know what our legal fees are, but they are.
But if you're looking, like you said, in the reverse, could we be responsible for tortious interference if that came out? Yes. But in the reverse, too, look at what the Attorney General is asking for. She's asking for conversations between the College Football Playoff and ESPN. The FSU lawsuit against the ACC, we're referencing ESPN routinely. You may end up in the reverse with us claiming that against one of them. So you really, 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 that's why I'm saying settlement is going to be the best option for them, because if they let Florida State get to discovery, this is going to get ugly quick. And ESPN likes to hide stuff. So we know that. But
not just that, ESPN is kind of similar. You brought this up; it was phenomenal too, by the way. DK, you talked about the Big 12 and where ESPN was at during that time when the two schools ended up leaving to go to SEC anyway. But it's also around the time when the ACC made their contracts, and Florida State was actually not threatening, but entertaining the idea of leaving the ACC. That's when the process of the ACC network, the promise of the ACC network came into play. They were even throwing around things like letting FSU have their own network, similar to how the Big 12 got Texas to stay for a little bit longer by giving them the Longhorn network. But when you go back and you look at now ESPN being in situations where they've had to have budget cuts, they've had situations where they've been struggling. The amount of money that was saved by Alabama, and to their defense, Alabama did if Georgia would have done what was necessary, we probably would not be having this argument because Texas would not have been as Texas wouldn't have been able to make the jump, but they would not have made sure Alabama made the jump into the college football playoff. There is an argument because of how much money was made or saved with that going into mine. Not only that, but now the reruns of on the SEC network of being able to show the second tier rights of the national championship. So there's a lot of things that could be found out in those things, and at worst, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we want to but we don't know. Maybe if we find out, you know what? We looked at all of this stuff, and by golly, we were not right. You're right. We were wrong. We just didn't deserve to be in the college football playoff. And you know what? The ACC is really is part of the G6, and we should just understand our rightful place. But if that were really the case, and it's really as simple as that. Just give us the documents and don't get sued.
There you go.
Simple. But typically when things aren't simple, they're complicated, obviously, and complicated things we don't necessarily always want to come to light. Now, the question Jeff Hill puts: do you think this would be settled before it goes to court? Also, Grant Gray asked a great question. Shout out to my Marching Chiefs. How quickly do you think this all gets settled?
Negotiations can take place at any time. They might already be, for all we know. That's all secret, and we're not going to know about it. Like you said, it's going to be a requirement. We have to go to mediation anyway. Eventually, we're going to start the discovery. It's going to get. They're either going to fight like hell to keep us from discovery, or they're going to settle. One of the two is going to happen. So I think it could be settled a lot faster than you think. Being honest.
I don't think Florida State gets out of this without paying a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I think, and the money isn't necessarily, the money is more so to save face, like so that the ACC doesn't look like they just got railroaded. And I don't think Florida State's in a situation where they're literally just saying, "I need to embarrass you." You got to remember that there's an end, but there seems to be a means to an end with this, which always makes it, whether we like all of the drama, which we're making it more drama because that's just the way the world is. 24-hour news networks, social media, Twitter, things that we were not designed to have this much access to information for the masses, but here we are. But the means to an end is to get us out of the conference so that we can make more money.
Yep.
If I have to pay $150 million to go make $1 billion, I'm going to pay $150 million to make $1 billion. And that's really what it comes down to. And what will end up happening is other people will, which I personally think 150 million will be the number. That's just me just dribbling and shooting. Don't ask me if I came up with a scientific equation. I don't know. I just like the number $150 million. It sounds good. And I think once we figure it out, there will be a few other schools that will be willing to do the exact same thing. And I think that's really where the ACC is coming to. They have to figure out what is the number they feel comfortable with for us to pay, because that's probably going to be the number that everybody else is going to have to pay. And then they'll come right back to the same situation they came with Maryland and probably say, all right, now you stay or go. And if you're staying, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to go moving forward. So
I hate that they're going to do that. I mean, we're going to leave, and I hate that they're going to punish the other schools the way they punished us with Maryland leaving, coming with the grant of rights and the higher penalties and all the stuff they did. I hate they're going to do that to other schools, but I'm not going to lie to you. If SMU, Stanford, and Cal are dumb enough to sign up for this, then go for it. We're just tired. We're done. I'm not going to, you know me, I'm direct. So that's how I feel.
Now, to end this with hope, the only saving grace for this marriage is, and I would like your opinion on this, because we do have precedent that has happened. And even though this conference is still going through their share of issues, it did delay the inevitable of the two teams leaving. But that would require admitting wrong. Could the ACC step back and say we're better, stronger? We have what the Big Ten wants. We have a actual conference that spans the entire nation. Meaning now with the additions of Stanford, Cal, and Texas, we have interest in the Midwest and the West Coast. We have the New York market in Syracuse. We have the New England market with Pitt, Boston College, and why do I feel like I'm missing somebody else up that way? But for those who don't realize, Pitt and Boston College, like go look at a map where Pittsburgh is. That's Big Ten country. Go look at a map where Boston College is. That's higher than New York City. I don't know if you realize it. Those places are cold, and it snows. We're already in places where it's cold and snow. Go look at Louisville, where Louisville is at. And then, as I told one person, Go look at the map and look at where a lot of the SEC schools are, and tell me where they're at.
Yep.
The South is not. Florida is the South, yes. Alabama is the South, yes. Mississippi is the South, yes. Go look at where Missouri. For those who don't know, I cover the Jaguars, and I had to be in Kansas City this time last year. Last week, Kansas City was minus 27 degrees wind chill. Just for y'all to know. But anyways, what if the ACC woke up tomorrow and said, you know what? We're wrong. We're wrong. We want to fight for this marriage. And we're going to actually drop our nuts and go after the ACC or actually show faith that they actually will fight and do what's necessary for their fiduciary responsibilities. Is there a saving grace for that?
What's done is done. The consolation prize to us was the ACC network. We couldn't even get that because these people couldn't even negotiate a deal with Comcast. What would they promise us that would work to get us to stay at this point? I mean, even their weak deals.
Huh? Putting games on the CW.
No, I mean, seriously, what? They are inept. They can't do it. They cannot compete with what's going on around them. We keep getting these weak little efforts, and I don't. It's over. That's my opinion. It's over. I will never trust the ACC. Not with the nepotism. Not with the inept stuff they've pulled. Everything they've done. I will never trust them to do the right thing. Not down to it. All the way down to a ref on the field. I will not trust them to do anything correct ever.
I guess we'll answer this question, right? Irvin Williams, what happens if ESPN, which they have the right to do, falls out of their contract in 2025? What does the ACC do?
They fold. I mean, they're the ones that hung themselves unilaterally on this deal with ESPN. ESPN, to my knowledge, have they even exercised their option? No. So if this is over, that's on the ACC. That was their unilateral strike. We had nothing to do with. They didn't consult us. So they get to pay that price. If that happens, then they're gone. It's over.
And Jason, no, you're right. The Syracuse market is not very valuable. It's not about necessarily the market. Like I understand what you're saying. It's all right. So Jacksonville is the top 40 market. You don't want the Jacksonville Jaguars for Jacksonville in this market. You want the state of Florida so that you can get the regional broadcasting. We put you into Georgia, which pushes you over. Actually, we don't even get Tallahassee. Atlanta, the Falcons get Tallahassee. It pushes you down close to the Orlando market. It puts us in the state of New York, which makes us still more valuable for marketing dollars, which would have made the AC, because the reason why the ACC network has failed is because they were not on Comcast, which is the largest distributor of largest cable distributor in the nation. You would have had, even though streaming is starting to get good, YouTube TV picked it up, but like YouTube TV was in its infancy, and like even now, YouTube TV, as it climbs to being higher than fucking cable, like it's already aggravating. So Comcast would have been a good choice, a good partnership for that, but they already paid ESPN a ton of money to be able to carry the SEC network. But when you go to Fox, which, as I keep trying to tell people, and I only know this through other business dealings and trying to negotiate stuff, Fox has a hard-on for ESPN right now, and they want what ESPN has. And even though they do have the Big Ten network, they were doing things with the Big 12. It's not a lot for them to go ahead and pick up another network. And with the Big Ten picking up their relationship with CBS, they're taking over the normal Saturday slot of games that the SEC had dominated for years. And trust me, it's a reason why they want to be in the South, which is why the Big Ten is very attractive. But CBS also has something where they would possibly be able to pick that up. So while the Syracuse market might not be great, if you have a program and you have a major sports broadcasting channel and there's a Syracuse game and Florida State is playing Syracuse, they're going to put that into the Manhattan market. They're going to put that all the way over there. And it will go into international dollars as well, because you'll probably get a chance to spill over into Canada in those parts. Just like Pittsburgh Pittsburgh is not just about Pitt. It's going to be able to get you into the Philly market. It's going to be able to get you into a lot of the other different things. That's the way these marketing dollars work. The more states the more territory you cover, the more fiscally attractive you are. We were going down, the ACC was going down the right path, but then for whatever reason, they went from they stopped. And in today's society, today's way of capitalism, you either innovate or you die.
Yep. Adjust or adapt. Or die. That's it.
So adapt or die. And regardless of how you feel, that's just the way the games are played. And it is the biggest key from all of our lawyers that we've had, which we need to do like a no lawyer network or some shit. Just get y'all on here talking that legal shit. You have, and I feel like I can say it better with these glasses. It feels more like, has more oomph. Always remember that everybody in this situation has a fiduciary responsibility to whom they represent. The HTC had a fiduciary responsibility to us. Our board of trustee members have a fiduciary responsibility to the university. Mike Alford has a fiduciary responsibility to athletics. And in all of that, it is our fiduciary responsibility to make as much money as possible. And I have a fiduciary responsibility to encourage you to like this channel. Go subscribe. Consider becoming a member. Consider becoming a member. All of these things that you guys are doing when you become a greenie, when you watch this channel, when we continue to push these numbers up, these are the things that go toward the community things that we do, like the book bag drives, the Christmas gifts, the Mentors for the Kids Foundation, the tailgates that you attend. All of those things are not cheap. They are not. They literally. I have a fiduciary responsibility to my family for you guys to do this, so it doesn't come out of my pocketbook. To be able to just, which I don't mind. But again, as a community, we could do more. One of the best fan bases in the world. Obviously, one of the best academic institutions in the world, from a undergrad, master's to your doctorate level degrees, such as law school and medical school. Some of the finest people come out of this, and I appreciate not only your friendship, Danielle, but I appreciate you coming over here and spitting game to us and breaking this down. And now everybody can know what Sunshine State laws mean, why Sunshine State law should be scary to people, and now you're equipped to go talk your shit on the timeline, because we have had experts tell us. And now you don't have to be a Twitter lawyer. And when they come and say, "Ooh, you're a Twitter lawyer," be like, "Nah, I listened to D. Kelley. And D. Kelley said, D. Kelley said that we don't want John Gruden getting fired from the Las Vegas Raiders because Florida State left the ACC. No, I was just joking. Bottom line is listen to these things. These are things that we can also, I hope in 2 years, we'll be able to come back similar to what we did with the Mike Norvell interview, which I was in awe of how that man 4 years ago said these things and has been true to the things that he told us 4 years ago. That we'll come back, and when all of this is going on or this is over, we'll come back and be like, damn it, they told us this, and it only had 2,000 views. But the other things have millions of views. But right here is where you have the best and the brightest. And I appreciate everybody for tuning into it. So, D. Kelley, anything you got going on you want to share with the people so we can know how to support you properly?
Just I guess follow D. Kelley 21, as I always said on our shows. Pretty much that's it. Other than that, no. I mean, yeah, like you said, that was a phenomenal interview with Coach Norvell. We've had so many great interviews, so many great moments that we've talked about lately and stuff. So it's always a pleasure. You're like family to me, so it's always a pleasure to get to talk to you.
I appreciate you. I will chop it up with you later, Danielle. Thank you so much.
All right, back at you. Take care.
All right. So as you guys see, appreciate you guys for here. We're 513 subscribers away from 5,000. Each increment we get to of 1,000 we give away 10% of that. So when we get to 5,000, we would do $500 giveaway on Big Games BS, which is on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 9:30-ish. We will be giving, again, we'll give away $500 as soon as we get to that. We give a secondary cash prize of the amount of likes that we have on that show. So if we have 40 likes, we'll give away $40. If we have 400 likes, we'll give away $400 on that show. So please, if you're just tuning in, please go and click the subscribe button. Consider becoming a member. Membership has its perks. If you're a 3-6 Mafia member or above, you'll get a chance to go attend the tailgate that we have for FSU spring game. If you're an all-in member, you'll get your spring game ticket, which will be in the Champions Club more than likely, as well as your tailgate ticket taken care of courtesy of Den Media Group. And if you're a Jags fan and other stuff, we do all kinds of other giveaways as well. I appreciate those who have noticed my glasses, and I'm looking distinguished. I appreciate that. I can see the world in 4K now. It's getting a little used. I'm a little used to it. So the goal is to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the year. We're well on track for that. And outside of that, man, I'll probably do a show tomorrow. Talking about my time in Tallahassee, talking a little bit about recruiting updates, Jamie French, some of the other different things going on. Outside of that, appreciate you guys for chopping it up with me. Go tune into all of the great Seminole shows and Gator shows and all of those other different things, man. Y'all have a wonderful evening.